Hey, what is going on, guys? And today I'm going to be showing you guys how to set up permissions on your Minecraft server. So whether you just made a Minecraft server or you're kind of confused on how to use PermissionsEx, I will show you everything and get you started on your Minecraft server journey, I guess you could say. So PermissionsEx is really important because it lets you decide the certain things that players can do based on the plugins that you have. And if you don't know what a plugin is, it's basically just an add-on for your server. So add-ons like factions and minigames and just the smallest plugins to the biggest plugins, those are the add-ons for your server. And so yeah, the first thing that you want to do is you want to head to the first link in the description, which is the PermissionsEx link. We're going to have to download this plugin, which is pretty simple. You just click on download right there, download again, and here is the .jar. So just drag this download to your plugins folder of your Minecraft server. So here we go. I'm just going to drag this, drop it in my plugins folder. There we go. So now we have that. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to download any other plugins that you want for your server. So this will help us create our permissions and decide what your players can do from the certain plugins that you have. So I'm going to download a plugin. So I'm going to be downloading two plugins, and it's completely up to you, but one is Double Jump, which allows players to double jump. Pretty simple. The next one is Essentials, which is probably one of the biggest plugins for Minecraft servers. It's basically just the essentials that players will need. So certain things like teleporting to other players, being able to fly, being able to message other players, just simple stuff like that. That is Essentials. So I'm going to download that. Alright, so now that we have some things to base our permissions around and to set our permissions off of, then we can go ahead and get started. So let's just restart our server. So after restarting your server, you should get a PermissionsEx folder. Now in that there's a config, which we won't worry about, and then there's a permissions.yml. So to be able to edit this, you're going to want to download a program called Notepad++ that just makes everything easier. 100%, I guarantee it makes everything easier. And with this program, once it's downloaded and installed, you can just right click and there should be a thing that says edit with Notepad++. If there's not, you might have to go to properties and set that, but let's go ahead and open that up. And here we have the most basic of basic stuff right here. Alright, so the cool thing that I forgot to mention about PermissionsEx is that you can set groups and pretty much ranks, I guess, on your server. So, you know, certain players will have a certain name with them, member, builder, moderator, whatever it is, you guys can set that with this plugin, and it'll be really easy. I'm going to show you how to do everything with this. Alright, and before we get started, one important thing to know is permissions have permission nodes with them, which will give them the ability to do what it says. So for example, for the double jump plugin, they have a permission with a permission node for it. So dj.doublejump, that is called a permission node, and this will give them the permission to do this thing. So obviously this will give them permission to double jump. So this is a really basic plugin, but if you look on the plugins link for your plugins, whatever plugin that you have, if you scroll down, you can eventually find where it says permissions. And like I said, each plugin should have a permission node that does a certain thing. So this lets your players be able to double jump. And then for something like Essentials, there's a ton of stuff. So essentials.fly, that is a permission node that we can type in our permissions.yml, and this will let our players be able to type /fly and let them be able to fly. So depending on who you give this to and what groups you give this to will determine what they can do. So back on here, we have options, which is a load of things that we can add, but there's only one thing here, which is default. So you can set this to true or false, and you can set this for each group. So each group can have the option to be the default group when a player logs on your server. So when a player logs on your server, if this is on true, then they'll automatically by default become this group, which is coincidentally called default. So let's go ahead and actually change this. I'm going to change this to member. We can change it to whatever we want, builder, noob, whatever you want. So after that, we can leave this on true or false, and then we can head down to the permissions where we actually type the permission nodes in. So one most important thing to know is with Notepad++, which is the program that we're using right now, we have to do a certain thing. So if we're trying to type a new permission node, then we can obviously highlight this and just type it in. But if we want to type a new one, we have to enter a new line, obviously. And then we don't want to type it from here because that is wrong. That will just completely screw up the plugin. And obviously it is wrong because it appears in red. So that should kind of, you know, send a message to your brain like, this is wrong, this is, no. I got a backspace and do this again. So when you enter a new line, you have to backspace all the way back to this right here. and then you can start typing in stuff. I don't know why that's like that, but as you guys can see, it's not in red. That's how you do it right there. So whenever you enter a new line, backspace all the way, then you can space it and type in whatever you want to do. So obviously it's red because I didn't backspace all the way. If we backspace all the way, there we go. So now I'm going to type in some of the permission nodes that Essentials has, and keep in mind that it's going to depend on what group it is. So if it's a member group, then it's obviously going to have the basic stuff. But if it's something like a donator or VIP group, then it's going to have extra stuff because people paid to be the VIP or donator. So it's going to have extra and really cool stuff. Or maybe if it's something like an admin, they're going to have a lot more controlling permission nodes. So something that is really basic is essentials.message. So we can either copy that or type that in. I'm going to type it in just for safety, I guess you could say. So essentials.message, and that will let players be able to message other players. Pretty basic permission, but that is because we're doing it on the member group. So there we go. Let's go ahead and type another one in, and keep in mind that your permission nodes start with a dash, obviously, and then after that you can type your permission node itself. So that's how that is, and make sure that the dashes are lined up with the beginning of the word. So if the beginning of the word was back here, then the dashes would be right there, but because it's not and it's lined up right here, the dashes have to be lined up with it. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on that when you type in your new lines. And then let's go with set home. So this will let players be able to set a home location on the server. And I'm just going to paste this one in because I feel safe. I know that I've already backspaced all the way, and we're good. So essentials.setHome, and that's going to be it for this group. We're going to create another group now. So we enter a new line to create a new group, space it up twice, and we have to line it up with the beginning of this letter. So that's where we start the beginning of our letter, so, or our word, our group name. So I'm going to call this one moderator and hit colon. So there we go. Make sure the colon is there or it's not going to register. And after that, just enter a new line, backspace, and then let's line it up with permissions. We don't have to worry too much about options. We could type that in again and then set default to false, but if we don't, then it will register as the default being false, if that makes any sense. So we don't have to type this in again because there's already something that has default as true. So instead, we're going to just do the permissions. So that's back here. Let's line it up, make sure it's lined up correctly, how the other one is, and then just type permissions in. And there we go. Make sure you type colon, that's very important, backspace, and then enter a new line, backspace, and let's go ahead and start the permissions for this group. Alright, so we're going to give them the ability to kick. So to kick bad players who aren't doing the right thing, paste that in, essentials.kick. Now they're able to kick players. And it really helps when a plugin like Essentials kind of categorizes things. So these are really moderator kind of commands and permission nodes. So let's go with essentials.mute. So that will mute players. So essentials.mute. And there we go. So I'm going to leave it as that, and that is the moderated group. Now we're going to create a new one. I'm going to go with admin. So make sure to type the colon, backspace, backspace. Let's line up permissions again. So we can type that. There we go. Pretty simple. And then now we can type in our new permission node. And I'm going to go with essentials.ban. So that would obviously ban players from a server, which is pretty important to have. And now the admin can ban players. So there we go. That's pretty cool, pretty simple. Now we're going to go a little bit more into detail with things. Obviously, you guys can see that the dash has a space after it and then has the permission node after it. But there is a really cool thing that we can do. As you guys see here, there is an asterisk after this. So there are certain permission nodes, if you notice, on your plugin pages. So obviously, whatever plugin page that you're looking at and whatever permission section you're looking at, there will be some plugins with a star. So what that means is it will give the players the ability to do everything that relates to the word before it. So if it's spawn mob, every single command for spawn mob. Now, if it was just essentials.asterisk, then I'll give them everything to do with essentials. So that's pretty cool right there. And you can also create your own asterisk. So just because it's not there doesn't mean that it doesn't work. So like essentials.mute has like 3 other commands for muting. So if we type essentials.mute.asterisk, it'll give them the ability for all of these other ones. So to exempt, to notify, or to mute players who are offline. So that's pretty cool. So if we were to do for set home dot asterisk, then that'll let them set multiple, set others, and set their bed. So let's go ahead and do that one. So let's create one more group. I'm gonna do this after the moderator group, in between the moderator and admin, just so it's kind of organized. So it kind of goes in order of authority, I guess you could say. So member has the lowest authority, then moderator, then I'm gonna go with the VIP. So these guys have a lot more permissions than others. So we're gonna go with essentials dot set home dot asterisk. So that will let them set as many homes as they want and do all the other things. So I'm going to create another group, which is owner, and they should be able to do everything since it's their server. But if not, then we can actually create a permission node which will give your players the ability to do everything from any plugin on your server. So they can do every single command and they have the permission to do everything. So with that being said, we can just type the dash and then one quote and then an asterisk and then another quote. So that is pretty much just quoting the asterisk, which the asterisk by itself means the permission to do every single thing from any plugin. So that's pretty cool right there. Keep that in mind. So let's say the VIP has the permission to do any of the set home commands, like set multiple, set their bed, and set home of others. But let's say we don't want them to do this specific command to set home of other people. What we can do is we can copy this individual one, but because we have set home dot asterisk, that will make them be able to do this. But if we have something, an individual permission that we don't want someone to do, we can type it in or copy it, enter a new line, and then dash, and then space, and then another dash. And this is called negating. So you can negate certain nodes so your players can't do those things. So let's type in the node that we want to negate, and then there we go. So it should look like this: dash, space, dash, and then not a space. Make sure there's no space, and then the permission node. So there we go, that's how to negate. So right now, each of these groups, they don't have a title. So if you notice in the chat sometimes that there are titles next to names, then that's what we're about to set right now for each group. Right now it's just blank, it doesn't have anything, but we're gonna set a title so that when your players are talking on your server, you know what player is in which group. So that's really helpful, and yeah. But before we do this, make sure that you have the plugin called EssentialsChat. So that'll be in the description. Right now I have Essentials just 2 without the chat, so let me get that real quick. So here it is, EssentialsChat. Download that, drop it in your plugins folder, and then make sure you save your permissions if you're going to restart. You don't have to restart right now, but if you're going to, make sure you save your permissions.yml. But after we drop that in, like I said, we don't have to restart, so let's continue. Just make sure you have EssentialsChat. And yeah, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create the thing. So it's another feature under options. Right now there's one feature called default, but there's another feature under options. If we enter a new line, backspace all the way, line it up with default and type prefix. If you guys are familiar with, if you guys have learned anything from school, pre is before, I'm 90% sure, but prefix is before. So before the player's name, this will appear. So we're going to want to type prefix colon space and then quote and then type whatever we want. So I like to do brackets. The cool thing about this is we can have colors. So the color codes are on the screen, and as you guys can see, and A is green. So if we type in a color code, anything after that will appear in that color. So and A is light green. If we were to type a word or a symbol, it would appear in that color. So what I like to do is I like to have brackets so it kind of stands out for the rest. And then so bracket, then we're going to type the title, which is member, the title of the group, member, and we can have all caps, whatever we want to do, and then a close bracket. That's what I like to do. But anyways, like I said, light green, and then anything after that will appear in that color. So bracket, member, bracket will appear in light green. Pretty cool. And I like to type in the color code white after that, so everything else appears in white. And then The last thing that's kind of important is to include some spaces. So spaces and then the last quote to finish it off. So everything inside of here is the actual prefix, and the quotes just kind of separate it from the rest. So make sure to end it off with a quote. And as you guys can see, the left is without spaces and then the right is with spaces, because without spaces it's just too close to each other, if you guys understand what I'm saying. So yeah, that's how we create a prefix. So we're gonna have to create an options category for the rest of them. So backspace all the way, line it up with the other options, just make sure it's in line. Options colon backspace backspace, and then once you get to options, line it up with default, which is 2 spaces, and then we don't have to do default, we can just go to prefix colon, and then here we go, we start with our new prefix. So I'm going to go with the color code and E, and that will make the bracket and the word moderator, or actually let's go with mod, mod in all caps. That sounds legit. So now close bracket for me. You guys can type in anything you want, you don't have to have brackets, and then and F, and then a couple of spaces, then the quote to end it off. So there we go, we have 2 prefixes now. We can finish the rest of the groups, which I'm gonna do. Alright, so I finished all my prefixes and we're good. I just did VIP and then admin, then owner. Just finish off your groups. So now we have to put certain people in certain groups, which calls for typing users at the end of your groups, and then hitting colon and then enter, then hit space twice, and then this is where we type in player's name that we want in certain categories. Now you don't have to type in every single player because the default is members, so when a player joins they'll automatically be sent a member. But if you have special players that you want in special groups, like if you want your best friend to be in the admin group, then you can put them in that group, which is the purpose of this right here. So let's go ahead and type in a player's name. So I'm gonna go with my name. So just type your name, colon, and then backspace, backspace, and then line it up with your name, and then after you line it up, type space, space, so 2 spaces, and then group, colon. Then after that, enter a new line, line it up with the beginning of group, dash, and then the group that you want to put them in. So I'm going to put myself in the VIP group. Make sure that the word you type is this, not the prefix. So go off of this. So there we go. Now if we enter a new line, we can type in permissions, and we can have a player have an individual permission aside from the group. So that works like that, permissions, colon, and then whatever permission node that you want right there. But I'm not going to have any permissions for myself. And yeah, so now we can test this out. And before, I almost forgot, I have the double jump plugin. So I still have to add the permission node that lets players be able to double jump. So let me add that to the VIP group. And there we go. So now I'm going to save my settings and restart my server and show you guys what it looks like. You guys are about to learn from my mistakes, and so I threw in a couple of mistakes there just so I could, you know, see and show you guys the smallest things can mess up your permissions. What I did was a couple of things, I messed up a couple of things, but sometimes a permissions file can be really long, so it's not that easy to spot an error. A really awesome tool that checks for it is to select everything, copy it, then head into the website in the description. It's called Online YAML Parser, so just select everything and paste it in with Control V. There we go. On the output it says error, and it shows you what line the errors are around. Now I still have trouble understanding what it means when it says this, but you can kind of figure it out. So let's go to line 17, and line 17, so I have options, I have prefix, but I forgot the header permissions. Big problem there. As you guys can see, the nodes have a header called permissions, so big problem. Let's backspace and type that in now. So there we go, permissions. And so yeah, let's go ahead and copy the new one and see if there still are any errors. So nope, it comes out perfectly. If there's nothing red, then it means it's perfect. And so yeah, we're good now. So even little things like not typing in a colon can screw it up, just some small stuff like that, and I like to use that tool to help me out when something's not going right on my server. So when you log in back on your server, you should notice the change. Now so what I did wrong, too many spaces. That's just ugly. I don't like that. There was too many spaces on that. I put way too many put way too many spaces. My bad, guys. So yeah, but still, it works. VIP, it's in the color that I want for VIP, and that is awesome. So good stuff there. Now let's head back into the permissions. So back here, let's go ahead and change this up a little. I think one space is good. Alright, so let's go ahead and check this again. Bam. See, that looks good. That looks really, really nice. So the last thing before this tutorial is completed. So another helpful thing that will save you guys a lot of time and is really good is something called inheritance. So if I go into my group, backspace, enter a new line, and then line it up with permissions, there's a heading that you can put called inheritance, and it kind of is what it says. You can inherit permissions from another group. So if you want this group to have the same permissions as any lower group and to inherit those permissions, then you can include their group name here. So instead of having these permissions in the VIP group as well, we don't have to type that in. So enter new line, line it up with the dashes, and then type the group name. So I'm going to inherit all the permissions that the moderator has because they are a lower authority than me. And there is actually no colon there, so it's just dash and then the group name. And then there we go. So if there's a long list of commands and you don't want to type it in again, or you just want to save a lot of time, then you can have inheritance and then the group name. So it will inherit the group under them. So moderator can inherit the members' permissions, and it just saves a lot of time, like I said. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Hopefully you guys are on the right path. Hopefully I set you guys up on the right path. If I did, and if this video helped, make sure to drop a like and make sure to subscribe, because I do so many plugin tutorials on really unique plugins that you guys might want to add to your server. So make sure to subscribe and check out my other videos. And other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.